Hello, DevOps people. It's that bearded guy Jochen again with his DevOps and infrastructure automation stream. Welcome. Okay, so let's dive right in. First of all, weather update. I'm happy to report that spring seems to try and arrive in Ireland as well. It's been pretty rainy in the 2 recent weeks, but after a bit of rain today, the sun's come out and I'm feeling that my mood has improved quite a bit. So, let's be productive. First of all, as always, you're invited to join me in the chat if anything I do keeps you confused, or if there is something that you'd like to add, to ask, to give me feedback on. Please hop into the chat and I'll be happy to respond there. Let's see. So, that's today's agenda. I'd like to resume where I left off last Tuesday, I think, where when I did work on our logging automation. So just to recap, we'd like to add logging to our Varnish servers, where we do content caching. And for that to work, I had to add a recipe to our Varnish cookbook that sets up our Varnish servers. And I did that, and then the second step will be to add fluentd to our Varnish servers, which takes these logs and ships them to an Elasticsearch where we can do analytics and visualize our traffic. When I prepared just a few minutes ago, I realized that I didn't have that I didn't get to do the pull request for my changes to the Varnish recipe, so I did that just a few minutes ago. So here's my pull request Varnish FiSteel add logging recipe, and that and every of our pull requests has a checklist that lists things we should take care of to have a complete pull request. And I think I'll have to do a few small things to make this complete. First of all, explain what this change does in our changelog file, so that when we release these changes, we can decide, is it a patch, or is it a minor change, or is it even a breaking change. Generally, things should also be documented at least with a few words in the README of a cookbook, and integration tests should finish successfully, and that's exactly what I started in the background here. So this is the test run for my logging recipe, or to be precise, for the logging suite in our test kitchen setup. Hopefully this will run successfully. I think it did last week, and if that's the case, I can tick off this third piece here, and while this is still running, I can do the change to the changelog file. Oop, I'm in the wrong directory here. Okay, there is already a non-released change, so I'll just add mine to the list. Added Varnish and a recipe Varnish and CSA to enable access logs. That's that. And luckily my test was successful too. That's great. So all I have to do is take a look at the README. I guess historically most of our READMEs aren't too content heavy. So let's just write a few sentences. This cookbook sets up Varnish, the Varnish reverse proxy. Well, everything else should be done in another change, I guess. We'll leave it at that. Since this is one of our most used cookbooks, the necessity isn't really there to have a long description and long documentation here. However, it would be nice, of course. That's the purpose of the README file after all. But anyway, I'll tick off changes listed in changelog, documentation updated in README. Well, I did update it, didn't I? And integration tests run successfully. Let's commit these two changes. Update changelog and README. Let's push these. And now the fourth item here, Ruby and Chef style tests run successfully. That's something that probably needs some work as well, because historically we haven't looked at coding style that much. And just to see how things turn out, rake test Ruby style, which runs Rubocop. Yeah, 200 offenses with lots of things that are probably repeated style violations. So that's not something I will do in the scope of this change. But what I can do is create an issue. So fix style issues, Ruby and Chef style according to our style guides. I'll add the cookbook name. And it's a testing issue. Is there a style? Yeah, there's a style label as well. Well, it's more of a style than a testing issue. Oops. Oh. Let's remove the testing label. Style and the cookbook name, that's okay. And I'll just name it style issues. So even if you can't do anything at the moment because your context is different, it's a good thing to add an issue so that someone who has a few minutes can try their hands at this fixing style issues, adding commas, or harmonizing quote characters and things like that is a pretty brain dead task, and a welcome task if it's late in the afternoon, you still don't want to stop working, but you need something that you can do pretty mechanically, so it's good to have these issues in here. So I'll keep this unticked, but it won't be a problem, or it won't block merging this pull request. Okie dokie. So that's that. I'll add our ops team as reviewers. And they can take a look at what I did. All right. I guess that enables me to already use this cookbook. I'll just leave this branch checked out, so in my development environment this version will be used if I depend on it. And I can go ahead and create a new issue for the fluentd changes that are necessary. So let's see, is there an issue regarding fluentd? No, there isn't, so let's create a new one. Fluentd style support varnish access log, in order to feed Varnish access logs into Elastic Search, we need to extend the fluentd log shipper configuration. So that's concerning the fluentd underscore freestyle cookbook. So we have issue number 212, and that's what I'm going to work on. I guess I'll have to create a branch from my current development branch here, otherwise I won't have access to the Varnish logging change. However, what is issue number 204 exactly? Okay, that's just the scope is limited to the changes on the Varnish side, which makes sense, but makes it a bit more difficult. Hey, Slayer Darth, how are you doing? Shout out to you. Happy to have you on the stream again. How are things in your neck of the woods? I'm struggling a bit in terms of best practices here. The things I want to do with fluentd will only work if I have a machine that already used the changes I have in this previous Varnish branch. Not good. Shared hosting provider acting up. Feels bad, man. Yeah, shared hosting. Don't get me started on that. As a hosting provider, I think it's pretty clear what my opinion on that is, but still, it's harsh if you're affected by that. Okay, that's an interesting thing, and it's a consequence of our decision to put all our chef cookbooks into a single monolithic repository. So if you are working on, say, a kind of infrastructure feature, and you require results from a previous work item, from a previous step, you probably have to do branches derived from master, something like that. Well, let's give it a try. It's at least it'll be an interesting exercise that I can relay to our team. Either it works and we can make it common practice, or it fails and we've learned something. Yeah, I have some rewrite rules in my HDAccess that are working locally, but not on a staging server. I have pre-versioned on a shared hosting provider. And they may work fine on the live side on the shared hosting, but I don't want to take the chance. Yeah, that's what you have a staging site in the first place. I find it peculiar that if you launch two sites with the same provider, you'd have to expect different results. If it works on your production site, on your live site, shouldn't it also work in your staging site? They might be completely separated, but still I'd expect them to be built in the same way, aren't they? Strange, strange. Okie doke. Let's keep working on a better hosting experience for our customers. Okay, I'll go ahead and branch a new branch off of my existing work. So it'll be 212. fluentd Varnish. Okie dokie. And let's change directories in both of my shells. And to be honest, I'll have to update myself how this cookbook even works, because it's still new and we haven't used it in production yet. So yeah, this is an extremely cheap hosting provider where you set your PHP version in the oh, that's interesting. You set your PHP version in HDAccess and then it uses the right PHP version. I set up a PHP 5.5 clone of a site on the hosting provider setup wizard. Actually, it was PHP 5.3, but they insisted it's 5.5. Well, to be perfectly blunt, you're screwed either way, because even 5.5 is pretty old. if I'm perfectly honest, we still have PHP 5.5 in place on our platform. So we've just discussed this morning that I'm going to inform our customers that we'll be switching it off at the end of the month. And everyone who hasn't upgraded to 5.5 will be automatically upgraded to 5.6. Because 5.5 has been outdated for quite some time, and even if in our case we are partly to blame that it's still around on our platform, it's time to see it go the way of the dodo. Okay, so the default recipe doesn't do much except calling td agent default. So it uses the td agent cookbook to install fluentd, and then I simply add the td agent to the admin group, so it has access to some system level logs, I guess. And then we have a few matchers that we can pull in, and a few sources. Okay, that's nice. So all I have to do is add a new source. So like it uses the chef client log here, I can simply go ahead and say recipes source Varnish and Varnish and CSA RB, and I'll go ahead and copy this part and just change a few things. Varnish and CSA, type tail tag varnish, format none. Well, we could, I guess it's format Apache, isn't it? Since it's using the NCSA format. And it's varnish. Varnish what? I don't know. To be honest, this is the kind of hosting provider who change things on their end which break your site, then try and pass the buck and insist it's you and not them. You can't trust them for a lot of important client sites, I think. Okay. Sounds you have your decision made for yourself. They're so cheap, I doubt they even back up your site's database for you. Ooh. Okay. Well. Run! Okay, so since I don't even know where my recent changes in the Varnish cookbook dropped off the log, I guess it's Varnish access log or Varnish NCSA log. I'll go ahead and build a test suite for that. Let's take a look at the tests that are in place. So there is a smoke test, default test. Okay, well, I guess I just create another one. Test smoke varnish and CSA spec. That's another thing. What exactly would I test in here? What do I already test in here? We just check a few basic things. So if I drop off the varnish configuration, I guess I should have an HCD TD agent, come on, TD agent conf.d, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 24 25 26 27 28 29 30 31 32 33 34 35 36 37 38 39 40 41 42 43 44 45 46 47 48 49 50 51 52 53 54 55 56 57 58 59 60 61 62 63 64 65 66 67 68 69 70 71 72 73 74 75 76 77 78 79 80 81 82 83 84 85 86 87 88 89 90 91 92 93 94 95 96 97 98 99 100 101 102 103 104 105 106 107 108 109 110 111 112 113 114 115 116 117 118 119 120 121 122 123 124 125 126 127 128 129 130 131 132 133 134 135 136 137 138 139 140 141 142 143 144 145 146 147 148 149 150 151 152 153 154 155 156 Varnish and CSA log.conf. I add the log, it's redundant, it should exist, but only if I add my new recipe to the test suite. Oh, there's an alarm going off in the neighborhood. Guess I should go ahead and close the window. Just a second. Source, Varnish, and CSA. Okay. Oh, you're right. It's not kitchen.docken.yaml. Am I going to change this? Yes, I am. Git move kitchen YAML kitchen.docken.yaml. There we go. The test container is still around even. Fail to complete converge action. Okay, it only thought it was around, but it's not actually. Now, I would like to see this working. Just testing that my changes create a new configuration file, that's not very satisfying. I would like to see a test suite that includes the Varnish recipe, starts logging, makes a web request, and then checks if it's going to ship something. On the other hand, that draws in lots of dependencies. So if I think into the future, I already have a chef client recipe here, so maybe it should actually install a chef client and try if logging and shipping works for that. And in my case now, I'd like to see it actually ship a Varnish log entry. On the other hand, I don't want to have a hard dependency on the Varnish cookbook simply to install a test. What I could do is add a test cookbook that's nested into my cookbook here, and that test cookbook could depend on the Varnish cookbook. And then I could execute tests on that. I guess that should be the way to go here, to create test cookbooks that use the fluentd cookbook in combination with the service cookbook that it wants to take logs from, and then do that. Yeah, I think that makes more sense. So I'll go ahead and create test integration cookbooks. And in there we would have a test fluentd Varnish. It's probably just consist of a recipe or two and a metadata RB file. So yeah, let's just copy our template cookbooks metadata file. It's named test fluentd Varnish. And then we'll do an include recipe, Varnish, fry steel, Varnish and CSA. And include recipe, fluentd, fry steel, source, do we use hyphens or? Yeah, we use hyphens, okay. Source, Varnish and CSA. We could start with this. And then we'll need a test suite. That has as its run list recipe test fluentd Varnish default. And then we need to add our test cookbook to the Burkes file, because I will not find that cookbook if we don't point it where it is. So the test fluentd Varnish cookbook is actually in the path. Yeah, it's a Berks file. Yeah, it's a bit hilarious, but it really makes sense, because with choosing the name Chef for their configuration management software, the company now named Chef Inc. Really made a mistake in terms of searchability. How do you Google for things that are concerning chef recipes? And the guy who then wrote this cookbook resolving thing said, okay, it should be a books file, because it tells that the test infrastructure, the test harness, where it'll find all the cookbooks that are necessary to run the tests. And he made the great decision to not use a cookbooks file or something like that, so then actually named it Burkes file. Basically picking up the Omergard meme. Okay, so the path is test integration, cookbooks, test, fluentd, Varnish. I guess that should do the trick. Okay, so now we have a converge of the default recipe. Let's run a verify default so that we see if it's actually working. Have I added my own test? Yeah, that's not supposed to be in there. Let's close a few files. We'll need that later. I guess that's already done. We won't need that for a while. Okay, so the default suite should not use the Varnish and CSA source, because that's what the Varnish and CSA suite should take care of. So if I verify default, it should still work. Interesting, it still fails. Oh, because I've added. No, that's the wrong one. Which spec file is it? Smoke. Guess it's already open. Let's see. Come on. Test smoke default. Default test.rb. How is it called test in the first place? It should be named spec. I took that out of the automatically generated cookbook scaffolding, and it generated that test smoke directory. I guess I'll change that to use the common test integration path. Alright, we can close this for the time being, and with that changed, the original verify of default should work. Okay, so let's try and converge the Varnish. I guess the test suite should just be called Varnish. Varnish. Makes things easier. So kitchen converge Varnish. Let's see if my first try at a test cookbook works. Probably not. Okay. What didn't work? Varnish fry still not found. Okay. That's fair. Because that's an internal cookbook. So I guess the Varnish steel cookbook should be found at this path. Yeah, that's where the name comes from. So the tool, just let me scroll up. I need to scroll up anyway, because the tool is called Berk shelf. It's not bookshelf, it's Berk shelf, and that's why it has a Berks file. Okay, still not found. Let's do a Berks update then. Guess it found it. Update all the Burkes. Still not found. Oh, I need to give a Berks file to the test cookbook as well. Makes things a bit more complex, but I guess we can't wiggle our way around that. So this one here needs a Berks file too. I can just copy this part. And actually I don't need the Varnish file still here, because that's really not a dependency of our main cookbook. Yeah, I have to change the path, of course. So let's see, this Berks file is a few levels down. How many? Let's see. Test, integration, cookbooks, something. 3 levels, 4 levels, 5 levels up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Huh, I wonder if that works. But wait. Yeah. Interesting. I hope I don't run into problems here. Hey Foxtrot, how you doing? You pie door? Don't get it. What is a pie door? Anyway, welcome to the stream, Foxtrot. Happy to have you here. Oh, come on. What do I do if I have a nested test cookbook that depends on other cookbooks, and is that even possible? My brain is hurting. It is the mathematical symbol for pi, isn't it? Yeah, well, the joys of Unicode. Okay. Oh, it does say what I'm doing wrong. I just need to read on. If you are loading Varnish files from another cookbook, make sure you configure the dependencies in your metadata. Of course I do. That's one thing. And I wonder if I even have to do this. I should probably be fine with that because yeah, we'll see. But the main thing is that I have to change this metadata file and tell Chef itself that I need this cookbook. And then it should look at the Burkes file and resolve things. And then we'll see how many double dots we need. Now it breaks completely. It can't constraints on package varnish fry steel, which does not exist. No, it doesn't find it. And the question is, does Berks Shelf do this resolution recursively anyway? So does it? I know Burkes Shelf resolves the dependency of my main cookbook, but will it recursively resolve the dependencies of my nested test cookbook as well? I have my doubts. Okay, that's correct, even if not working. Let's go back to the 5 levels up. Let's go the few levels down and actually do a Berks install here. At least that worked. Now we have a berksfile.lock in here. Maybe that will help resolve things. Nope. I guess I'm actually on the wrong track here. Test integration, cookbooks. Doesn't make sense to have a Burkes file here in the first place. What we need to do is I need to have the entry in the metadata file in the nested test cookbook, and I need to have the dependency in my Burkes file in the top level cookbook. This will make sure the Varnish Fry Steel cookbook will be installed in the test container, and then Chef will be able to resolve what is in the metadata file of the test cookbook. Hi Greenfeet, how are you doing? Happy to have you here. Welcome to the stream. How's it going? Okay, that looks much better, even though it fails. But let's see why. Cookbook, fluentd fry steel not found. Same thing. I actually have to have fluentd fry steel in the metadata file. Okay. Now I have the issue that Varnish NCSA, in the Varnish NCSA cookbook recipe can't be installed. And that's because this recipe alone doesn't work. It requires the default recipe to be run beforehand, so all the packages are installed, and only then you can use the Varnish NCSA recipe. Not sure if this is the proper way to go, but at least it's doing this. That moment when Control-C not working on grep feels bad, man, and it's just looping through the results. Yeah, and it scrolls and scrolls and scrolls, and your terminal isn't responding to your Control-C. It'll respond later, so that might be some consolation. You'll see the Control-C in the end. Yeah, I had this many times myself. That's why I like working in Tmux, because I can stop and I can scroll back and do things like that. Well, I can't scroll back through tens of thousands of lines, but still. Okay, where were we? I have to actually... include recipe Varnish Freistil default. So I need some kind of Varnish installation. Hey LNG Grinds, thanks for the follow. Nice to have you here. Yeah, Slayer, I can wholeheartedly recommend using Tmux. Just having these windows that I can switch between here, window number 1 where I have my Vim open, window number 2 where I run my tests, window number 3 where I do some interactive stuff. I could even split this window into 2 if I would like to do so, so I just can do a keyboard command and I have another shell open where I can do stuff, and then I can close it again, and things like that. That makes work so much easier. It also maintains long-running SSH sessions. That's correct. Yeah, you can simply detach a Tmux session and resume it later. That's exactly what I'm doing here. I might detach that session after ending the stream today and simply resume on Thursday where I left off. And since I'm using mobile shell, or short MOSH, to access my development machine here, it's not on my local machine. I'm even immune against internet disconnects, so should my connection go down, MOSH will be able to reopen it as soon as I get online again. Okay, let's see, now it's starting to install Varnish. And with the Varnish package comes the Varnish NCSA service. Okay, now it's breaking because it tries something interactive, which of course will not work. Configuration file at default Varnish and CSA created by you or by a script. Interesting. That looks like an order issue. Hey Simon, welcome. Bit late to the party. Well, yeah, the party is still going strong, so you're not too late. That's interesting. It looks like our chef recipe created this file before it actually installs the Varnish package. That doesn't make sense though. Or does it? No, I don't think so. That file is in the Varnish and CSA recipe here, so that shouldn't. Oh, it's because I ran this before and now I've. Okay, yeah. So what I can do is either throw away this test container, or what I'm going to do is simply. How do I have in the YAML? Simply log in. Kitchen login Varnish. And I delete this file. I should really be careful with rerunning tests on the same test container, because artifacts from previous runs could influence later runs. Now we have a different problem. Varnish tries to set a U limit, and it even can't create its working directory varlib varnish docken, where docken is the host name of my test container. Interesting. Might be because our default recipe in the Varnish cookbook isn't actually used, especially not with default attributes. So I might need to change a few things. So let's see. Where do we find out which settings will work? Let's take a look at the Varnish cookbook itself and its test setup. It has config FreeStylebox listen port 81. Let's simply copy this. Should have left this open. It's just Varnish. Bit inconsistent here. Normally this namespace in there should have the actual cookbook name, but here the cookbook name is Varnish dash Freistil, and the namespace in the node attributes is only Varnish. But that's historical. So let's see if it works with these attributes. Creepy background music. Good thing I've locked the door behind me. Every one of you would see first if my murderer came in. Or my wife. Or both. Still not working. Still tries to do strange things. Can't create a tries to set a U limit which might not be permitted in the container. I guess that's another part of this setup, because this one here has privileged true, and I assume this one doesn't. Yep. But now I have to restart this container, because just change the setting in the kitchen YAML file will not change the permissions this container has. So I'll do a kitchen destroy varnish. And then another converge with a fresh and hopefully privileged container. Again, if you have any questions about the stuff I'm doing here, feel free to ask. There aren't any stupid questions, just stupid answers by me. Once again, setting up testing takes far more time than the simple change that I did here, which is simply add another configuration file. Although, to be fair, I'm trying to test far more than just what this single chef resource does, which is create a configuration file. If I do this one-to-one, the test would just check if the configuration file is set up, and that's that. However, I'd like to see it working. Maybe I'm doing too much here. Depending on another cookbook, just to set up Varnish and stuff, I might get away with simply simulating a log entry. So my cookbook wouldn't have to have a whole Varnish setup. It could simply write to the log file that we are shipping, and that's that. This would reduce complexity significantly. Yeah, I guess that's the way to go. So I wouldn't have to do all this. I'd simply include fluentd freestyle default and fluentd freestyle source varnish and CSA, and then I'd do some touch var log varnish and CSA log and see what happens, something like that. So let's see if that works. So just have fluentd set up. And that way, that whole dependency stuff goes out of the window, because had I thought of this beforehand, I wouldn't have had to branch off a development branch as well. I could. It would be. It is going to be a completely separate change that can deal with varnish logs, regardless where they come from and who takes care of generating them. That makes much more sense. So, TIL that you do not depend on other cookbooks for testing if it's not necessary. Yeah, and I see it clearer now. What I tried to do was basically have a simulated production environment where I have a completely set up varnish and then I take its logs and ship them somewhere. But that's not the purpose of Test Kitchen. Test Kitchen should only just check if the cookbook at hand does what it's supposed to do. And the cookbook at hand is the fluentd cookbook. It should take a varnish log file and ship it. but the test shouldn't have to set up a whole Varnish infrastructure to see if that log is generated. That's a concern of the Varnish cookbook. So that should be done there. All right, so, and of course things have worked from the start. I even should, well, I don't have any tests, do I? Nope. Okay, let's add one. And let's add that in test integration. Test integration Varnish. Nope. Just a new file. Test integration. Varnish is the test suite, and we'll just use default. No, Varnish and CSA spec.rb, and we'll say describe file etc tdagent conf.d. Let's take a look at the existing test conf.d, and then file name. In this case it would be Varnish and CSA.conf. It should at least exist. What I could do is check if this path actually does exist. On the other hand, this path should be configurable in the first place. Yeah. This should be an attribute, shouldn't it? So, let's make it one. Default fluentd freestyle, that's the namespace, and source Varnish and CSA log path equals var log Varnish and CSA.log. Is that the actual file? I can't see here. Just CSA enabled. Let's see. Varnish and CSA default path. Dear me, there is Varnish 6. We are quite a bit behind here. Okay, so is there any mention of where the log is written to? Nope. It's Varnish log. That's not what I'm interested in. Nope. Let's see here. Varlog, Varnish, Varnish and CSA log, I can guess. Yeah, that's probably, so I'm probably correct. So by defining this, where is my, oh, here it was. That path should be taken from the attribute, and so we'll change this to node fluentd fry steel. Come on. Source Varnish and CSA log path. So I'll take this path. Let's take a look at its contents, and we could even check if our node attribute gets written in there. So it should have path something something in there, and we can actually check. Path. No. Path var log varnish varnish and CSA dot log. And it does. So that's a nice trick to avoid problems if you have a regular expression in Ruby that has a lot of slashes in there. You can, instead of putting it into slashes and escape a lot, you can simply use the %r format to keep things readable. I guess that's that. So it turned out much simpler than I anticipated. Actually, I don't need that test cookbook at all. Can get rid of that. Test integration cookbooks. And instead of using the test cookbook, I simply use the recipes directly, fluentd fry steel default and fluentd fry steel source Varnish and CSA. Oops, failed. Yeah. I need to tell Burkes that we don't need that cookbook anymore. Using Burkes update. Oops. Yeah, I need to change the Burkes file. Burk. Don't need that. Don't need that. And then again, I don't need an extra test suite for this either, because I can simply do a move test integration varnish something into test integration. Okay, let's change that smoke stuff to our normal way of doing things. So there is even a varnish and CSA spec in test smoke. So I go ahead and move test integration varnish that into test smoke varnish and CSA spec. That. Hey Keys, welcome to the stream. Thanks for following. I'm happy to have you here. Now I can go ahead and rename git move test smoke. I really don't know what smoke means in that regard anyway. I know there are smoke tests, but will that work? Oh, it does work. Okay. And then git move test integration default. Oh, it moved smoke in there. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Git move test integration smoke everything into test integration. Doesn't work, not under version control. Yeah. So move test integration smoke varnish and CSA spec test integration. There's no default. Okay. Test integration default. Move test integration smoke varnish and CSA to test integration default. So I have everything under one test suite, and then we need to use git move test integration smoke default test to test integration default. And we should be able to remove test smoke. Oh, okay. No, it's test integration smoke. Remove test integration smoke default and smoke itself. Brilliant. And then we need to rename that test integration default test. Doesn't make any sense. Test integration default spec. We're using inspec after all. Okay. Now there is no need for a Varnish test suite anymore, so I can go ahead and destroy the test container. Kitchen destroy Varnish. It's the ice cream car. As soon as the sun is out. That's that. So we can remove the Varnish test suite and instead just move this over here. We'll do a kitchen converge default to see if it works. So it has created a varnish ncsa.conf, and if I do a verify, it should run all the existing tests, and our could not fetch inspec profile. Yeah. There's somewhere we referenced that. I should not have to do this. Right? Okay, it checks the Varnish and CSA con first, even. Okay, but that's not a problem. Okay, wonderful. So, let's commit stuff. Add recipe for Varnish access log shipping. And fixed. Kind of waiting for the stream where the reaction is be right back and you coming back 5 minutes later with ice cream. Something about priorities. Oh yeah. I'll do that sometime. And ice cream should be a priority, shouldn't it? Okay, so renamed test smoke to test integration because that's our convention, and renamed or moved kitchen docken setup to kitchen.docken.yaml because it's a convention. And that's basically it. You could add that it resolves this issue. And push. Let's finish things by actually making a pull request. Yeah, and now I regret having created a branch of the other development branch. I won't create this progress in that way. Oh, you heard Greensleeves playing in the background. Yeah, that was what I meant with the ice cream van. We have an ice cream van doing the rounds if the weather is nice. Oh, what have I done? So, yeah, I somehow felt that I'd learn something today, and that is never branch of development branches, because if you do the pull request, it'll contain everything, including the parent branch. And that's not what we need. Now, there should be some way to rebase this. Can you just create the PR against whatever branch you want? Yeah, you are missing something. I made a mistake in the beginning. Because there are two parts to the whole project, basically, which is have the Varnish cookbook write a log file, and then have the fluentd cookbook pick up this log file and ship it. And because I saw this dependency, I took the development branch for the Varnish cookbook and created the fluentd branch of the Varnish branch, which is why my pull request for fluentd now has the changes of both cookbooks. Here are changes fluentd freestyle, and here are changes in Varnish freestyle. And so my gut told me from the beginning that that might not be a good idea, but my brain just had to catch up. Now I know why. What if I try and throw away all the changes that are let's see what git rebase upstream tells me. Probably a typo, yeah. Come on. just create both PRs against master and enforce merge order. Yeah, no, the problem is that I'm already trying to do a pull request against master, but my development branch, but I'm pushing two branches at the same time, and I think I can fix this by removing the previous two. Wait. Update changelog and readme. That's add recipe for Varnish. Let me see. We have the add recipe and update changelog and readme is against Varnish. Varnish and CSA recipe and doc and config is Varnish. So I can throw away 3 of the 4 commits. In this branch. The first 3 can go. Okay. And now I only have 5 changed files and they all belong to fluentd. Yep, makes much more sense. And the commits that I threw away are still do still exist in the parent branch, so that's not a problem. Okay. That's that. Okay, so once again it took me quite a while, more than 1.5 hours, to do a pretty small change. However, it was the meta stuff that actually made up the most important part of this session, which is always branch of master. If you have changes that depend on other changes, you'll probably have to handle them in different pull requests and then just tick them off in order. Don't expect Test Kitchen to set up a whole testing infrastructure for you, so a whole pre-live environment or something like that. That's a problem that you'll probably have to solve differently. Keep things simple is again another important learning here. If your recipe only creates a configuration file, well, then test that it creates the configuration file, test that it creates it correctly, but don't go beyond that. Especially don't pull in other cookbooks that might change in the future and create hard dependencies that way that really don't add much value. So I'm happy. I hope you are happy too. Again, if there is anything you'd like to ask, I'll be in the chat for a while. Otherwise, you can simply go to github.com/gviz and you'll find my DevOps repository there with today's agenda, where I can actually tick off extend fluentd Freistil cookbook to support Varnish logs. So we are done for today. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment under here. I'll be happy to respond. And I'll be back on Thursday, where I'll be doing some Ruby on Rails development for a change. So change of topics, change of technologies. I'd like to do a few things so I don't get rusty, and that'll be interesting. And there is an agenda file as well for Thursday, where I plan to do, with a list of things I plan to do. And until Thursday, thanks for watching, thanks for following Klein lol. Happy to have you here. Thanks everyone for participating in the chat. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a pleasant day. Cheers.